In the last episode, we saw Jun Won hurriedly rummage through his wardrobe to find a t-shirt for Dohee to wear for the night. Dohee snatched it from him and stormed into the bathroom, slamming the door behind her with irritation. Inside, she noticed a cut on her cheek and vividly remembered that it might have happened when she fell unconscious as her father raised a soju bottle to hit her. The band-aid, Jun Won must have tenderly placed it there. After a while, Dohee emerged from the bathroom, now dressed in Jun Won's clothes. She quickly deduced that Jun Won had intentionally given her the biggest pants he had to tease her. As Dohee looked around the room for Jun Won, her eyes were drawn to a collection of paintings. She immediately recognized them as the works of the late artist John Heesian, whose paintings gained tremendous recognition after her death and skyrocketed in value. Suddenly, Dohee spotted a wedding photo of Jun Won and Cha Yuna among the paintings. Annoyed, she questioned herself why Jun Won still had the photo if he claimed they had broken up a while ago. Out of nowhere, Jun Won's voice startled Dohee. He was calling from the master bedroom, asking for a towel. As Dohee went to give him the towel, her eyes widened in shock when Jun Won suddenly emerged from the bathroom completely naked. Flustered, Dohee dropped the towel and exclaimed that Jun Won was insane for coming out like this in front of a stranger. Jun Won grins, commenting that he deserves to be confident. Dohee snaps back, telling Jun Won to shut up and just put some clothes on. Jun Won, undeterred, teases, "What's the big deal? Remember at the hotel last year when we already..." Embarrassed, Dohee quickly places her hand over Jun Won's mouth to stop him from saying more. Jun Won gently grabs her hand, kisses it, and asks if Dohee wants to try again what they did at the hotel. Before Dohee can respond, Jun Won kisses her. Just as things are about to escalate, Dohee's stomach grumbles loudly. Blushing, Dohee explains that she hasn't had dinner yet. As she takes her first bite of the food, she compliments Jun Won, surprised at how good it tastes. Jun Won smugly replies that he has been in the food industry for the past 8 years, so he can probably cook better than her. Dohee retorts that she is a good cook too, but probably not as good as Cha Yuna. Confused, Jun Won asks why Dohee is bringing up Cha Yuna all of a sudden and wonders if she's jealous. Annoyed, Dohee insists there's no way in hell she could be jealous of Yuna. Shifting the conversation, Dohee tells Jun Won to turn down the heater because she's feeling hot after her shower, adding that it's because of people like him that there's global warming. Smirking, Jun Won tells her to eat, assuring her he'll turn it down. Suddenly, Jun Won questions Dohee about the man in the alley. Who was he? Jun Won asks, his concern evident. Without waiting for a response, he advises Dohee that they should go to the police station tomorrow. It seems that man is making a habit out of hanging around there, he says, especially since he keeps contacting you. I'm sure I caught him on my dash cam, threatening you with a bottle. With that evidence, you should be able to apply for a restraining order. As Jun Won speaks, a sense of relief washes over Dohee. His words give her hope, making her feel that she is not alone right now. Dohee was lost in thought when Jun Won approached her and offered a drink. She accepted it and thanked him. Noticing her tense expression, Jun Won asked, "What's on your mind? What's with that look on your face?" Dohee sighed and commented that she was thinking about her childhood. With a bittersweet grin, she explained that she had a dream about her childhood earlier when she first experienced the time loop. She then revealed to Jun Won, "I have died once before. And that man you saw in front of the company was my stepfather." Curiosity and concern filled Jun Won's eyes as Dohee shared everything about her past, how her parents used to beat her and starve her, but one day, for some inexplicable reason, they took her to an amusement park. It was there that she realized they were planning to abandon her. That night, she experienced her first time loop, taking her back to the moment before she was abandoned. Jun Won, trying to comprehend, asked, "Was that your first time loop?" Dohee nodded. "Yes, at first, I was terrified and begged them not to abandon me. But my parents fought because of that, and my mother died after being hit with a soju bottle. After repeating that day 10 times, on the 11th day, I tried to protect my mother and stood in the way. And the person who died, was me." As she spoke, a sense of vulnerability washed over her, but sharing her story with Jun Won made her feel a glimmer of solace. Jun Won asks with genuine curiosity, "Did you experience a time loop after that?" Dohee nods and replies, "Yes, and that was the last time. In the end, I just gave up and was sent to an orphanage. That's when I realized that everyone could be happy if I was the only one in misery." Jun Won gently touches Dohee's cheek and remarks, "A time loop can be a blessing or a curse, depending on how it's used. But the price is that we must remember everything." With a bittersweet smile, Dohee says, "You're right. I was so sick of it 10 years ago that I seriously considered dying. But I experienced a time loop again." She glances at the scars on her wrist and adds, "I was headstrong and tried to kill myself over and over, but all attempts failed. It was my 5th try when I really thought I was dying, but when I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. That was when I realized that God was trying to save me at any cost. So, from then on, I lived my life as diligently as I could, trying to find meaning in being born this way. I should have continued to live diligently like that, but for some reason, I was curious about my parents who abandoned me, so, I looked for them. When I finally found my mother through a DNA registry, I learned that she was in a vegetative state due to a car accident. And that man, my so-called stepfather, wasn't even paying for the hospital bills and was living his life moving from one motel to another. Dohee still doesn't know why she did it, but she paid her mother's hospital bills for about a year. When she finally cut ties, her stepfather kept contacting and tracking her down. Nibbling her lips, Dohee laments that she shouldn't have looked for her mother in the first place. She wonders aloud, why did I do that? Suddenly, Dohee asks Jun Won about his first experience with the time loop. Seeing his hesitation, she quickly adds, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I know how hard it is to talk about old wounds. Jun Won finally opens his mouth with a smirk and comments, I usually don't say anything, but even if you were abandoned somewhere in outer space, it's better to be together than alone. So, be on my side, and I'll be on yours. Staring into Jun Won's eyes, Dohee slowly touches his face and hugs him. She then asks, do you want to sleep with me tonight? I'm so exhausted that I just want to put everything down and rest. Jun Won smiles and replies, sure, let's just stay together, the two of us. Leaning toward Dohee, he kisses her on the forehead. Then, to her surprise, he swiftly lies beside her and whispers, sweet dreams. He kisses her forehead again and says, you said you wanted to put everything down and rest, so just sleep tight. You don't need to worry about any nightmares. Asking Jun Won to sleep with her was an impulsive decision. Dohee was utterly exhausted, yearning to crash and rest. She vividly remembered just how safe and cozy she felt in his arms last year. As she lay beside him, she questioned her feelings for Jun Won. She still didn't have a clear answer, but the thought of distancing herself from him unsettled her. She wondered what Jun Won might think of her. In the morning, Dohee complimented Jun Won on his skill at peeling fruit in one go. Mischievously, Jun Won quipped, I'm naturally good at peeling things. That's why I'm also good at taking clothes off. Dohee rolled her eyes and replied, I never asked. Changing the subject, she commented on how Jun Won seemed really into the painter John Heesun, given that his house was filled with her work. She added that the paintings had a unique, almost strange aura. Before Dohee could say more, Jun Won stopped her, revealing, John Heesun is my mother. Dohee's perspective shifted instantly. I actually like the paintings, she said, trying to recover. Strange is good. She suddenly remembered reading a critique about John Heesun, noting that while many believed she had died in a fire, the actual cause of her death was suicide. Jun Won reminds Dohee of the time he mentioned wanting to inherit something when his father dies. He reveals that he was referring to his mother's paintings, which his father currently owns. Jun Won explains that his father remarried a long time ago, and if he passes away without a will, the ownership of the paintings will be split between him and his father's new wife. Curiously, Dohee asks, so is that the condition your father set? That if you get married, he'll write up a will regarding the inheritance of the paintings? Jun Won replies, yes, that's why I intended to marry a woman with no strings attached. I had to get married for the inheritance, but I had no intention of taking responsibility for another person. Dohee guesses, then Cha Yuna must have wanted something from you, considering the marriage was called off. Jun Won nods. Yes, she was the one who called off the wedding. Dohee processes this information, thinking, so it wasn't Jun Won who ended the engagement, it was Yuna. If she hadn't called off the wedding, they'd be married by now, she immediately dismisses these thoughts, not wanting to get caught up in unnecessary speculation. Steering the conversation in a new direction, Dohee enthusiastically remarks on the grandeur of the house, noting its prestigious location on the top floor. She reflects on her childhood dream of living high above the ground, recalling how she once resided in a cramped semi-basement. From her tiny room, unable to even fit a bed, all she could see were the bustling feet of passers-by. It dawned on her that, aside from school, she constantly felt overshadowed and confined beneath the feet of others, a realization that deeply unsettled her. Dohee passionately declares that when she grows up, she is determined to live in a towering skyscraper, preferably on the uppermost floor. It's a dream she has harbored for years, consuming her thoughts with unwavering intensity. Jun Won chimes in, expressing his own affinity for the top floor. He extols its prime location and the convenience it offers in terms of commuting to work. Then, in a surprising turn, he casually asks, so, would you like to move in and live with me? For a brief moment, Dohee is left utterly bewildered by Jun Won's proposition. Then, with a sudden surge of shock, she blurts out, "What?" She hastily urges Jun Won to stop joking around, emphasizing that it's not funny in the slightest. With a mischievous grin, Jun Won clarifies that he's not joking around, he's seriously suggesting it. Should they get married? Dohee can't help but feel a sense of déjà vu from a year ago. She asks Jun Won directly if he likes her, not as a colleague or as a person, but as a woman, would he date her? Without hesitation, Jun Won confirms that he would. He admits to liking Dohee, but he's unsure if it's love yet. If she were to ask him if he loves her, he finds it hard to answer. However, among all the women he's met in his life, he likes her the most. He believed they both had something to gain from it, as she had mentioned before that she didn't want to waste her energy on other people. Hearing this, Dohee snaps and states that she finds it hard to accept his proposal. She doesn't plan on marrying someone she doesn't love, and since she has never loved anyone in her life, she supposes it will be hard for her to find someone to marry going forward. After changing clothes, Dohee slams the door and storms out of Jun Won's house. Jun Won is left pondering, gazing at the t-shirt Dohee wore last night, then shifting his gaze to his mother's painting. He contemplates the significance of both love and responsibility, acknowledging how important they are. However, he wonders if he can dare to take on such significant matters when he feels like such a mess himself. While Jun Won was deep in his thoughts, he was abruptly pulled back to reality by the ringing of his phone. The caller ID showed it was from the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor gravely informed Jun Won that his father had managed to survive this time, but he didn't have much time left. It was almost time to prepare for the inevitable. Jun Won turned away, brusquely telling the doctor not to call him every time something like this happened. The nurse, visibly shocked by his coldness, asked the doctor if he was certain Jun Won was really that man's biological son. In the lobby, Jun Won's stepmother confronted him with a sneer. She remarked on how quickly he had rushed to the hospital, insinuating that he was eagerly anticipating his father's death and the ensuing inheritance. She taunted him about his desire for his mother's paintings, which had been gathering dust in the studio for 20 years. She pointed out that one of those paintings was hanging in the break room, having fetched 200 million won at the last auction. She suggested that increasing the value of the paintings through his father's death was a fitting tribute, just as his mother had done. But Jun Won remained unfazed, not even flinching at her harsh words. This only fueled her disdain further. She concluded with scorn that she would win this battle, as no woman would be foolish enough to fall in love with a man like him. With that final, cutting remark, Jun Won's stepmother swept out of the waiting room, leaving a tense silence in her wake. At the company, Mr. Ha informs Jun Won that the collaboration with Cha Yuna, which had fallen through last time, is now back on the table. This time, Cha Yuna's team has expressed a positive interest in moving forward. Jun Won immediately orders Mr. Ha to schedule the meeting as soon as possible, and as before, Mr. Ha will be in charge of communication. Mr. Ha readily agrees. Hearing this, Dohee wonders if Cha Yuna's sudden interest in a collaboration is a ploy to get closer to Jun Won. However, she quickly dismisses her worries and refocuses on her work. Later that night, at a restaurant, Dohee tells Nuri and Ian about Cha Yuna's almost marriage, which was called off a week before the wedding. Nuri comments that since Jun Won was the man who almost married the person Dohee dislikes the most, she must be looking at Jun Won differently now, feeling turned off by him. Dohee firmly states that it's none of her business what they do, so it doesn't affect her. Ian suddenly snatches the soju bottle from Dohee's hand and scolds her for overdrinking. As Dohee and Ian bicker, a sudden grin spreads across Nuri's face. She then announces she's leaving because her boyfriend is calling for her. Dohee exclaims in surprise, "That's so random." Nuri winks at Ian and apologizes for the abrupt departure, suggesting that the two of them should stay and enjoy themselves. In the washroom, Ian gets a call from Nuri. She tells him that she left to give him and Dohee some alone time, so he should make good use of it. She advises him not to try anything that doesn't suit him and to be honest. Being a bad boy is outdated, she says. It doesn't suit you either. Just be kind and sweet towards Dohee. After coming out of the bathroom, Ian notices Dohee's hair has come loose and might get into the stew she's eating. He offers to tie it up for her. As he ties Dohee's hair, his hands start to shake. Dohee, noticing this, asks if he's sick or something. "Why are your hands shaking so much?" Ian quickly makes an excuse, saying it might be because he practiced too hard the other day. Concerned, Dohee advises him not to push himself too much and to take it easy. Ian finally finishes tying Dohee's hair. Dohee turns towards him and asks, "Well, how does it look?" With his heart racing and his face flushed, Ian stammers, "It looks fine. You look good with your hair up too. Actually, whatever you do, it always looks good on you." His tone is fumbling and awkward. Dohee looks at him, slightly amused and a bit creeped out. While driving back home with Ian, Dohee notices a text from Jun Won, sent an hour ago, asking her to meet at the park near her house. She thinks, since the text is old and he hasn't called, he must have left by now. Still, she instructs Ian to stop the car near the park, saying she needs to meet someone. Ian, puzzled, asks, "Who are you meeting at this hour?" Dohee replies, "Just someone from work." Ian stops the car and hands his muffler to Dohee, saying, "It's chilly out here. You might get sick. This will keep you warm." Dohee looks at Ian and comments, "You're acting super weird today." Ian grabs Dohee's hand and is about to say something, but suddenly, Jun Won steps towards them, asking, "Dohee, are you just getting home now?" Seeing Jun Won, Ian questions, "Is he the one you're meeting from work?" Jun Won greets Ian but, noticing their intertwined hands, he pointedly asks, "Why are you holding hands like that?" Dohee quickly pulls back her hand, explaining, "We're friends, and friends do that." Jun Won then grabs the muffler from Dohee's neck and starts removing it, stating, "You won't need this since we'll be talking inside my car." Ian grabs Dohee's hand again, insisting, "You can talk here. I'll wait until you're done and then take you home." Jun Won reaches for Dohee's other hand and retorts, "I really don't want to be interrupted. Is there a reason you're acting this way?" With that, they start quarreling, tension escalating between them. Dohee, fed up with both of them, shouts, "If you like holding hands and quarreling, then hold each other's hands." Ian and Jun Won immediately pull back their hands from each other. Turning to Ian, Dohee thanks him for the ride and firmly tells him, "Go home now." Without waiting for a response, she leaves with Jun Won. In the car, Dohee asks, "Why did you want to see me?" Jun Won hands her the watch that had broken the other day, saying, "I wanted to give this back to you." Dohee looks at the watch and comments, "It must have cost a lot to fix. I'll transfer the money to you immediately. Just tell me the amount." Jun Won replies, "It didn't cost much. Instead of sending the money, how about you buy me a coffee next time?" Dohee nods, accepting the suggestion, but she also probes, "Is this the real reason why you're here? You could have given me the watch at the office tomorrow. Why come all the way here?" Jun Won just stares at her for a moment, his gaze intense and unreadable. Feeling uncomfortable, Dohee shifts and says, "Don't stare at me like that. It makes me feel uneasy." As she prepares to get out of the car, she advises, "You should stop coming by like this. It's really uncomfortable for me." Jun Won quickly requests, "Let me at least take you home." Dohee refuses, "It's just around the corner. I can walk." Suddenly, Jun Won grabs Dohee's hand to stop her. "Let go of me," Dohee requests, her voice firm yet wavering. Instead of releasing her, Jun Won holds on tighter. "If I let go of your hand right now," he states, his voice thick with emotion, "I think I will regret it for a long time." Squeezing her hand more firmly, Jun Won continues, "I know I've been full of excuses until now, but I really like you. I want to be with you because I like you." His eyes search hers, pleading for understanding. "I'm not very good at this, and I'm sorry that I've hurt you. I had a hard time telling you how I felt because I thought there would be no turning back if I put a label on my emotions. After I met you, the word love carried so much weight, and I didn't want to say it lightly." Dohee looks at him, her expression softening. Slowly, she asks, "Will there ever come a day when we truly love each other?" Jun Won replies he wouldn't know, but if their relationship ends here like this, he will never be able to forget it. He confesses that he doesn't really know what love is, it makes him feel like his head's in the clouds. So, he wants to find out what love is with her. Dohee wanted to say something, but she loses her voice again because of the time loop. She knew that she would remember this moment even if a time loop starts, but still, she felt so nervous. She wanted to say something, so she called out for Jun Won in her mind. With a grin, Jun Won leans closer to Dohee, asking why she is calling out to him so desperately. Dohee couldn't believe how in the world Jun Won is just reading her mind. Jun Won tells her that normally he can't hear anything 5 minutes prior to the start of the time loop. He lived like this for 20 years, and yet after he met her, the only thing he could hear was her mind. He whispers in Dohee's ears that it seems like only they can hear and talk to each other during this period, so doesn't she think they are destined to be together?